We continue now at the top of Daf Bezam and Bezam Meseches Makkos. This is Makkos Daf Tube. On the previous Amud, the Gemara asked, why is it that Edom Zomim, let's say they testify about somebody that he's a Cholol, talking about a Kohen, that they say he's a Ben Grusha or Ben Chalutzi, or the son of a Chalutza, and therefore he doesn't have the status of a Kohen, he's considered a Cholol. The halach is that the Edom Zomim, they don't become Chalolim. The question was why? And Bar Pada, he suggests that it's a Kal V'chomer. He says if somebody who creates the Chilul, let's say a person marries a Grusha and has a child, so that person who married the Grusha, that Kohen, he's not a Cholol, but his kids are Chalolim. So in such a situation, we say that that person doesn't become a Cholol, that Mechalel is Eino Mischalel, that person who married the Grusha does not become a Cholol. So certainly Edom Zomin, who are only attempting to make someone a Cholol, they're trying to make the defendant a Cholol, they don't even succeed, certainly they should not become Chalolim. And now Ravina is responding to that Kal V'chomer of Bar Pada, and he says, if you make such a Kal V'chomer, then you've nullified the entire concept of Edom Zomin, because we can say the following according to that. We could say Umah HaSokel, let's say somebody, just like somebody who does skila, Eino Niskal, he himself is not going to get skila. What that's referring to is a situation where the Edom Zomin don't merely try to give the defendant skila, but they're actually successful. Rashi says, Umah HaSokel, Eino Niskal, Edom Shalohuzmu, Ad Shenerak HaNidon. Let's say the Edom, they're not falsified until after the defendant is killed. V'yachar Kachuzmu, and then they become falsified. Ein Neharagin, the halach is they don't get killed. Kedamin and Bepirkan, like we're going to say in our parak Hargu, that if they kill Ein Neharagin, then they don't get killed. Dechsiv Kasher Zaman, because it's written as they tried to do to the defendant. V'lo Kasher Asa, not like they actually did. So that's just the halacha by Edom Zomin. Again, Umah HaSokel Eino Niskal, if the person who causes the skila, the Edom Zomin, that they actually are successful at getting the defendant to be stoned, they don't get stoned. Haboliskol, so if you have an Edom Zomin rather, who are trying to give the defendant skila, V'lo Sakal, but he doesn't actually get stoned, Eino Din, Shaloi Sakal, so certainly he shouldn't get skila in that situation, and of course that would apply to all cases of Edom Zomin. You'd have no cases of Edom Zomin left, and so therefore that cannot be a good Kal V'chomer. Rather, you have to go back to the answer we gave on the previous Zomin, the original answer. The original answer was simply learned from the pasuk. The halacha is that you have to do kasher zamam, you have to give them kasher zamam, you have to give that punishment to them, to the Edom Zomin, but not to their children. That you can't do by cholol. It's impossible, because if they would be chalolim, their children would be chalolim. To give it only to them and not to their children wouldn't even be really kasher zamam. And that's the real reason why we say, again, in a situation of cholol, they don't become chalolim, but rather they're going to get malchus arboim. And Rashi explains, haboliskol velosakal, again, one who tries to give skila but doesn't succeed, shehuzam ad shalo neraganidon, meaning he's falsified before the defendant is actually killed. So again, you would end up with that Kal V'chomer, which of course would nullify the whole concept of Edom Zomin. Therefore, we have to go back to the original answer. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah then had a second case where they get Malchus Arboim and don't get Kasher Zamam, and that's the case of Me'idin Anu B'Ishploni Shu Chayiv Golus V'chulu. Let's say they testify about a certain person that he's chayiv to go to exile because he killed B'Shogeg. So in that situation, if it turns out they're Edom Zomin, they don't go to Golus, but rather again they get Malchus Arboim. And the Gemara asks, Menahani Mili, from where do we know this? Amar Reish Lakish says the Amar Krutz, because the pasuk says Hu Yanus El Achas Harim. It says he is the one that runs away to one of those cities, to one of the Arim Miklat, and we make a drasha Hu Velo Zomin. He runs, but Edom Zomin in that situation they don't get that punishment, and again therefore they're going to get Malchus Arboim. And the Gemara continues with a second answer. Rabbi Yochanan Omer, Rabbi Yochanan says Kal V'chomer. We can make the following Kal V'chomer. This is similar to the attempted answer in the previous Amud when it came to the case of Cholol. The Kal V'chomer could be as follows: Umahu Sha'asa Ma'isa B'Mezid. If he did something on purpose and he did an action on purpose, Eino Gola, he doesn't go to exile. Hein Shalo Asu Ma'isa B'Mezid. They didn't do an action B'Mezid, means to say that they just do a dibur, witnesses just speak. Eino Din Shalo Yiglu. So isn't it true that they should not go to Golus? Rashi explains, Hu Sha'asa Ma'isa B'Mezid Eino Gola. Again, he did a Ma'isa B'Mezid. Hahoreg Sha'asa Ma'isa. Let's say a person is a murderer and he does it in B'Mezid Aso. The halach is, if a person is a murderer and he kills on purpose, Eino Gola, he doesn't go to exile. It's only for Shogeg, only if you do by mistake. Even in a situation where he's not getting the death penalty. Let's say he did it on purpose, but there was no warning. So again, if we're going to say that guy doesn't go to Golus, so Haim Shalo Asu Ma'isa, they didn't do an action b'mezid, Ela Dibur Bialma, they just spoke. When you testify, you just speak. Uva Mezid Heidu, and they testified on purpose. Eino Din Shalo Yiglu Ala Mezid. Isn't it true that they should not go to Golus over that action that was b'mezid? Again, that's Rabbi Yochanan saying this Kal V'chomer. If he did a Ma'isa b'mezid, he doesn't go to Golus. So Haim Shalo Asu Ma'isa Mezid Eino Din Shalo Yiglu. But the Gemara continues and says 1 second, Vihino Senis. But according to that argument of Rabbi Yochanan, we can actually make the argument the other direction. Because Hu Sha'asa Ma'isa B'Mezid, he who did an action on purpose, let's say he killed on purpose, Lo Ligli, he doesn't go to Golus, but that's obvious. Ki Hechi Delo Tahavale Kapar, because we don't want that he should have an atonement. But they, the Eidim, Shaloasu Maisu Mesa, they didn't do something so bad because they did something on purpose, but it was not a Maisa, it wasn't an action. Again, it was a Dibor, it was just speaking. So Nami Liglu, they actually should get Golas, Kihechi del Havalu Chapar, in order that they should get a Kapar, in order that they should get an atonement. And so therefore, really, that Kal V'chomer is not good. And so the Gemara says, Ela Machvar to Reish Lakish, rather you have to go back to the answer of Reish Lakish. Again, it's learned out from Hu Yanus, and we say Hu Velo Zomamin. And the Gemara continues, Amar Ula says, Remez le'edim zomamin min haTorah minayin. From where do we know a hint to edim zomamin from the Torah? The Gemara says, Remez le'edim zomamin. What do you mean a hint to edim zomamin? But it's written in the pasuk explicitly. V'asisim lo kasher zomamin. It says you do to the witness like he tried to do to the defendant. You don't need a hint to it. It's explicit in the Torah. And so the Gemara explains the question. Ella, rather, what we were asking is as follows. Remez le'edim zomamin shalokin min haTorah minayin. From where do we have a hint that edim zomamin can get malchus? And the hint comes from the following pasuk, because it's written in the pasuk, v'yitzdiku es hatzadik, and they say that the innocent one is innocent. V'yirshu es harash, and they say the guilty one is guilty. V'hayim bin hakos harash, and then it says hakos, which means malchus. You're going to give malchus to the wicked. And so the Gemara wants to know what exactly is the meaning of this pasuk. Mishum v'yitzdiku es hatzadik v'yirshu es harasha, because they said that the innocent is innocent and the guilty is guilty. V'hayim bin hakos harasha. That's the reason why you're giving malchus to the wicked. The point of the question over here is, if it's talking about what it sounds like it's talking about, there's a court case and the innocent one is innocent and the guilty one is guilty, what do you have to go through all of that and say that they make this one innocent and this one guilty? Simply say that the guilty party gets malchus. So that can't be what the pasuk is referring to. There must be something else going on over here, and that's the hint that Edom Zoman get malchus as follows. Ella, rather, what the pasuk is talking about as follows. Edom shehir shiu as atzadik. The pasuk is talking about a scenario where witnesses originally said that the innocent one was guilty. V'yasu Edom acharini, and then comes along a second set of witnesses. V'yitzdiku as atzadik demeikar, and they say that the innocent one actually is innocent. They prove that he really is innocent, that these were false witnesses. V'shavinu lahani rishayim, and they render these false witnesses into the rishayim. They're the guilty ones. The witnesses are guilty because they were liars. They're the Edom Zomamin, meaning to say the context of the pasuk is actually talking about a classic case of Edom Zomamin. V'hayim bin hakos harash, and then the pasuk finishes and says that there's malchus. So that's the hint that Edom Zomamin get malchus. But the Gemara continues, well, why do you have to go to such a source like this where you're darshaning the pasuk? Why not just learn it out from Milosana? It says Losana. What's the pasuk of Losana about? The pasuk of Losana is Losana b're'achoid shakar. You can't be a false witness. So that's a lav. It's a negative commandment. Negative commandments carry malchus. That should be the source for malchus. And the Gemara says to that, Mishum have a lav shein bo maisa, because when you testify falsely, that's a negative commandment, but it doesn't involve an action. As we said, it involves speech. V'chol lav shein bo maisa in lokan olav. When you have a lav shein bo maisa, there is no malchus, so that's why that cannot be the source. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis taught, Dalit Devarim Nemru Be'edim Zomin. There are four things that are stated with regards to Edom Zomin, and they are as follows. Ein Nasin Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza. Number one, Edom Zomin, they don't become Ben Grusha Ben Chalutza. You don't make them Chalolim. That's like our Mishnah said. Vein Golan Lari Miklat, also they're not exiled to the Ari Miklat. That's also like our Mishnah said. And the other two things are as follows. Vein Mishalmin Es HaKofer. They do not pay Kofer. We'll see Rashi in a moment. Vein Nimkarin Be'evid Ivri, and also they are not sold as Evid Ivri. And the Brisa continues, Mishum Rabbi Akiva Amru, in the name of Rabbi Akiva, they said, Afein Meshalman al Piatzman, they also do not pay through themselves, meaning to say through their own admission. Edom Zoman, when they admit, they are not going to pay. And Rashi explains, Ve'in Meshalman es HaKofer. Again, the third thing in the Brisa was that they don't pay Kofer. Im Heidu b'shor hamuad shahar ges adam. That would be the following case. Let's say they testify about a shor that is a shor hamuad, that's a shor that's already accustomed to goring, and the shor kills a person. Now, normally when a shor kills a person, the halach is that the owner of the ox has to pay what's called Kofer. So v'huzmu, but if they're falsified, so they're Edom Zomin, v'hayim mechayiv es habayil and Kofer, they would have been mechayiv the owner to pay Kofer. Techsivim Kofer yushas olav. It says that you're going to give Kofer, and so therefore that Kofer payment, what we're saying in the Brisa is, they don't pay that Kofer payment as part of their kasher zamam. Ve'enim karan, also they're not sold as an Evid Ivri. Heidu shagonav, let's say they testify about a certain person that he stole, ve'ein lo malashalim, and he's not able to pay. The halach is if someone steals and can't pay, then they're sold as an Evid Ivri. Ve'nigmar dino limacher, the person, there was a verdict that he was going to be sold as an Evid Ivri. Kedechsiv ve'nimkar b'gnei vaso, it says that he's sold because of his geneva, because of his stealing. So the Edom Zomin, if it turns out they're false, they are not sold as as Eved Ivri. And in Meshalman al Piatzman, and then Rabbi Kiva said they also don't pay by admission. Meaning, Im Huzmu Bebezin, meaning if they're falsified in courts, Velo Hispik Baldin Lahamidon Bidin al Hazamosin, and the Baldin, he hasn't had a chance to bring them to court because they were falsified. Ad Sheborchu, and then what happens is they flee, Uvo Bebezin Acher, and they come to another court, Vahodu Shehuzmu, and then they admit that they were falsified, Bebezin Ploni in that other court. So through that admission, again, they're not going to pay. Ulekamon Mefarish time, but the Gemara later on will explain the reason for this. And the Gemara continues and explains the Braisa, Ein Nasin ben Grusha ben Chalutza. Again, Edom Zomin don't become ben Grusha ben Chalutza, they don't become Chalolim. Kedamran, that's like we said in the Mishnah. Ben Golan Lari Miklat, and also they're not exiled to the Ari Miklat. Kedamran, that also we just explained above, that was also in the Mishnah. Vein Meshalman es HaKofer. Now the third case was they don't pay Kofer. What's the reason for that? Kasavri, the reason for that is because the Braisa holds Kufra Kapora, that Kofer is an atonement. The reason why you pay that is as an atonement. It's almost as if you killed the person even though it was your animal, and you need that kapara. B'hanila b'nei kapara ninu. Now the Edom Zomin, they don't need that kapara, they don't need that atonement, so they don't pay kofer. And the Gemara continues, Man tana kofra kapara. Now who is the Tana that holds that kofer is a kapara? You don't have to say that kofer is an atonement. It could be, it's like a payment of restitution. And so who's the one that says kofer is a kapara? Amar Rav Chisda says, Rabbi Shmuel ben Oshel Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. It's Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. The Tanya, as we learned in the following brayso, V'nasan pidyon nafsho, he's going to pay the redemption for his soul. That's the kofer payment that we are referring to. The full pasuk over there is Im kofer yushas olav v'nasan pidyon nafsho kechol asher yushas olav. So again it says v'nasan pidyon nafsho. So what exactly are you paying? Whose soul is being paid? So that's a machlokas tanoim. The main nizik, the Tanakama says that you pay the value of the nizik. The one who was killed, you have to pay his value. Rabbi Shmuel ben Oshel Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, says the main mazik, that you have to pay the value of the damager, the owner of the animal that killed the person. He has to pay his own value. And so the Gemara says, my lav is it not? This is exactly the machlokas. The marsav our kofra mamona. The Tanakama holds that the kofra is a mammon payment. It's a monetary restitution. You have to pay the heirs, the orphans, the value of the person that was killed. It's like a restitution, monetary payment. Umarsav our kofra kapara. And the other one says, no, kofra is kapara, kofra. The kofra payment is an atonement, so you're paying your own value. The mazik pays his own value. It's like a kapara for his own soul. And the Gemara says, Amar Rapapa says, lo, no, you don't have to say that's what the Brisa means. The kuli alma kofra kapara. It actually could be that everybody agrees that the kofar payment is an atonement, and it's just a question of what exactly you pay. Here the machlokas is as follows. Mar savar b'denizik shaymin, and one says that we evaluate through the value of the nizik. Umar savar b'demazik shaymin, and the other one says we do b'demazik, he has to pay his own value. Now paying the b'demazik makes sense if it's a kapara. The question is, why would anyone say you do it b'nizik? That's the next question of the Gemara. My time mayu d'Rabbanan. Well, what's the reason of the Rabbanan that you would do a kapara but pay the value of the nizik? And the Gemara says to that, Nemar hashasa lamata, v'nemar hashasa lamala. It uses the word hashasa below, and it uses the word hashasa above, and essentially we're learning a gzera shava from a similar use of the word. Malahalan b'denizik, just like over there, we're talking about b'denizik, the evaluation is from the nizik, afkan b'denizik. So too over here, the payment is through the nizik. Again, it says over here, kachol asher yushas olav, that's hashasa, and we learn from the other hashasa, we'll see Rashi in a moment, that the payment is b'denizik. Rabbi Yishmael, but Rabbi Yishmael responds to that, v'nasan pedyon nafshok, it says the redemption for his soul, so you're going to pay the mazik's value. For Rabbanan, but the Rabbanan say, yes, pedyon nafshok siv. It does say it's a redemption for his soul, miyuk yishayminan b'denizik shayminan. Nevertheless, the evaluation, the amount of money you pay, is based on the value of the nizik. And Rashi explains, kufra kapara, again, the kofar payment is an atonement, l'chapra al zeh shaharag sharas adam, he needs a kapara, because his ox killed a person, v'hani la b'nei kapara ninu, and these witnesses, they don't need that kapara, shalo harag shoram adam, because their ox did not kill a person. Umar savar kufra mamona, the other one says the kofar payment is a monetary payment, shehizik gufo shal zeh, because there was damage done to this person's body, and therefore, there's an obligation to pay the heirs the value of the person that was killed. Kufra kapara l'chapra al atzmo, shechayev misa b'dei shamayim. For kapara would mean he needs an atonement on himself, because really he's chayav the death penalty by heaven. Therefore he has to give his value. But the nizik shaymin, and the other one says we evaluate through the value of the nizik. Kapara, that is his atonement. Ki yoiv d'mei nizik, when he pays the value of the nizik. Well, the kamim mefarish time, and the Gemara will explain later the reason. Again, hashasa. My time the Rabbanan. The Gemara then asks, what's the reason of the Rabbanan? The ilu Rabbi Yishmael mistaber time. With regards to Rabbi Yishmael, it makes sense what he's saying. Kevin the kufra kapara. kapara, if it's the idea of kofar is it's an atonement, he gives his own value. And the answer for the Rabbanan again was Nemar Hashas Lamala. It says Hashas Lamala. Now that's referring to Benogef Ishahara. That's a case where a person he strikes a woman who's pregnant, and so there's a miscarriage because of that. Kasher Yashas Alabalo Isha, so it uses the word Yashas over there. V'nemar Hashas Lamata, and again it says Hashas Lamata over here by Kofar. By Kofar Im Kofar Yushas Olav. It says by Kofar Im Kofar Yushas Olav. And so we say Mala Halan B'denizik, just like over there it's B'denizik. Shemeshalim Dmei Valdus Shanizoki. You have to pay the value of the fetus that was damaged, and so therefore over here also it's going to be Dmei Nizik. And the other one says Pidyon Nafsho. Again, the other one says no, it's the redemption for his soul. The Nosin it's Kofar, the one giving the Kofar. For Rabbanan Amrilach and the Rabbanan, they'll say to you in Vadai Pidyon Nafsho, who it is a Pidyon Nafsho, the Kofar Kapara, because again, Kofar is a Kapara, it's an atonement. Miu, nevertheless, according to the Rabbanan, B'den Nizik Shamin, and we evaluate through the Nizik, Uvachi Hava Lamazik Pidyon Nafsho. Through that, the Mazik has a redemption for his soul. And the Gemara continues, the Brisa then said, Ve'einim korin be'evid ivri. When it comes to Edom Zoman, they are not sold as evid ivri. Let's say that's what they tried to do to the defendant. And the Gemara says, Savar Rav Hamnuna l'meimer. Rav Hamnuna thought to say, Hani mili, the Brisa is talking specifically about the following scenario. Let's say he has money. So for a situation where he has money, he's not going to be sold as an Eved Ivri. He'll pay for what he stole there. To Migo, to Iu, Lon is Davin, since he wasn't going to be sold as an Eved Ivri, so Inunami Lom is Davin, so they're also not going to be sold as Eved Ivri. But let's say it's a situation where he does not have money. Even though they have money, Mizdavnu, then they're going to be sold because they were trying to have him sold, so they should be sold. But the Gemara says, 1 second, but why can't they say to him, if you would have money, would you actually be sold? Of course not. And so we also shouldn't be sold. So that cannot be what Rav Hamnuna is saying. Rather, Rav Hamnuna thought to say as follows. When the Brisa says they're not sold as an Eved Ivri, that's if either he has money or if they have money, since in either case they have an argument not to be sold as an Eved Ivri. If he has money, they can say that's not what they were trying to do to the defendant. And if they have money, they can say had the defendant had money, so then he wouldn't be sold, we shouldn't be sold, we should be able to pay. But if he doesn't have money, and they don't have money, so in all scenarios, everyone would have been sold as an Eved Ivri, so then Mizdavni, so then they would be sold as an Eved Ivri. That's what Rav Hamnuna thought to say. Amar le Rav, and Rav says to him, V'nimkar b'gnei vaso That's incorrect what you're saying, because it's actually just a Gzeras HaKasav. It's learned from the Pasuk that Edom Zoman are never sold as Eved Ivri. It says that the person is sold for his Geneva, for his stealing, and we learn B'gnei Vaso v'lo b'zamamo, it's only for his stealing, and not for a situation of Edom Zomamin. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. The Brisa said, Mishum Rabbi Akiva Amru, that Rabbi Akiva says that Edom Zoman, they don't pay through admission. And the Gemara says, my time with Rabbi Akiva, what's the reason of Rabbi Akiva? And the Gemara explains, Kasavar Kanasahu, it's because Rabbi Akiva holds Edom Zoman as a knas, it's a fine. Uknas ein meshalim al piatzma. There's a general rule that a fine is not paid through admission. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabba says, Teda, you should know, Sharei lo asu maisa, they haven't actually done anything, V'neherogim u'meshalmin, and they're killed, and they have to pay, meaning to say Edom Zoman, it's always what they attempted to do. They didn't actually do anything, and yet they're being punished with kasher zamam. That's how you know that it is a knas, that it is a fine. Amar Rav Nachman says, Teda, you should know, Sharei mamun biad bailam, the money's still in the hands of the owner. Same basic idea, they just attempted to do it. U'meshalmim, and they pay. Again, that's how you know that it is a fine. And Rashi explains, Uknas ein meshalim al piatzma, a fine is not paid through admission. Techsib by gabe kefil, because it's written by kefil. Kefil is a fine. It's when the person steals, he has to pay double. It says, Asher yarshian Elohim, it says that he becomes guilty through the courts. Prat l'marshiyas atzma, that excludes if he's guilty by way of admission. Teda, you should know the knasu, that it's a fine. Sharei hami'idim b'nefesh lo hargo adam, when they testify, they didn't kill anybody. V'lo nerag adam al piyam, no one was actually killed through their testimony. V'neragin, and they get killed. U'mashalmin mammon, and they have to pay money in situations of money. Again, same idea. They're just attempting to do it. That's how you know that it is a knas, that it is a fine. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Gimel Amud Aleph.